Hello, and thank you to everyone who made an effort to give a submission about DA 147 2022, which is for the proposed Lane Cove Indoor Sport and Recreation Facility at 180 River Road. And whether you're for or against it, I appreciate the fact that you have taken the time to make a submission, and I've read through all of those submissions. And I felt it important just to do this little summary just to help out, as I've identified some myths that I think I can very quickly myth bust and clarify, and also a few points of clarification. And I've got down below, basically a summary of all the responses I've provided to residents over time about this development application. The purpose of this is I want to make sure that we're referencing the right source documents when we're looking at this. Definitely welcome your questions. You know my record on how I voted on this, but regardless of that, I welcome questions and I'm happy to answer them for you. And I do this in a spirit of helping to clarify a lot of the queries that I've seen. And by all means, what I'm going to cover in this quick little video isn't comprehensive. It doesn't cover everything. You can have a look at my email below. And if I've missed out on something or you still have further questions, please write to me. I am here to help answer those for you. So first of all, very important myth that was going around was this notion that the golf course will be closed for 3 years. I can confirm as Mayor and Council, I have never seen in writing any proposal by Council to do so. I don't know where this idea came from. So very clearly, there is no plans, to my knowledge, at all, or in my discussions with staff, to close the Lane Cove golf course for a period of 3 years. In the December Ordinary Council meeting, Council gave an update of saying there were 3 options that are available. The build time for the project is expected to be around 18 months. So those is to retain the golf course in a fully operational format with 9 holes. There could be a limited option with less than 9 holes, or to not operate the golf course at all. Now, just to give you a bit of background on this, whether it will remain 9 holes during construction or whether it's reduced will really come down to once we've gone through the tender process with builders, where they will inform what space they need to construct the project. And to keep in mind, where Council is conscious of this, I think the canopy is a great example where Council was fully aware that removing parking from the centre of Lane Cove Village would be an issue. And this was stated as a challenge for construction to all the builders who put in a tender for that project. And basically, ADCO, who is the company who built the canopy, came up with that solution where they found out a way that they could start construction on the canopy and as soon as possible return public parking to the residents of Lane Cove, irrespective of the fact that the whole project wasn't completed yet. So this is where, as a council, we're fully cognizant of this. And my personal preference, and from what I've seen so far, and remember this is my own personal opinion, it looks like it'll be cheaper if we can keep the golf course open from a maintenance perspective. So as per the Ordinary Council meeting in December, it's reported that Council is in discussions with the Lane Cove Golf Club about how this may operate. We don't know the full answers yet because we're still going through the process. But the short of that, myth number 1 to bust is no closure of the Lane Cove Golf Course for a period of 3 years. Now, myth number 2, there was a lot of correspondence that I read of people saying that they felt the recreation space will be too small in the facility. So I wanted just to walk you through a bit of compare the pair of what is proposed. So what I've got here on the left is the current floor plan of the Lane Cove Golf Club building. On the right is the proposed sport and recreation facility. These are not to scale. I emphasise that, but I'm doing a like-for-like comparison on square meterage. So if we look at outdoor dining, the current facility is approximately 75 square metres. In the new proposed DA, there would be 204 square metres of outdoor dining. So very clear that's quite a significant increase in outdoor dining. When we look at indoor dining, now note here what I've got in green in the current facility is 222 square metres, which is both the upper and lower spaces within the current golf club. And this does double over for both recreation and dining as well at times. So in the proposed DA, there'll be 227 square metres of dedicated indoor dining in these plans. And you can see what I've highlighted in purple is the kitchen. So that does not include kitchen space in that 227 square metres of indoor dining space. The next one we go to for comparison is the golfer's lounge. Now, I haven't got the square meterage of the existing lounge for the presentation of this. However, we know in the new facility, there's 118 square metres of a dedicated golfer's lounge that connects to a bar directly. And again, I think what you're starting to see here, trend in the proposed DA, is there's no double up of spaces. These are all dedicated spaces, whereas in the current facility, the different functions double up at various times in the current golf clubhouse. If we look at public meeting room, well, the current golf club has 45 square metres for a meeting room. The new proposed facility has 56 square metres in size for a public meeting room. If we look a bit further as well, again, multi-purpose room. So again, in the current golf club, this space doubles up both as indoor dining and recreation at times. Again, separate facilities in the proposed DA. The current 2 spaces in the golf clubhouse, 222 square metres. The 3 multi-purpose rooms side by side, 285 square metres in the proposed facility. And if we look a bit further on of some other space, so in the proposed DA for the Sport and Rec Centre, there's a level 3, call it a mezzanine, been referred to as the wedge. That's another 365 square metres of space that's available for recreation purposes. That is fully accessible via lift for people with accessibility needs. So in total, we go from 222 metres of recreation space in the current facility, which also doubles up with dining at times, to a separate 650 square metres dedicated for recreation space in the new DA. And what I've also got here is just a comparison as well of on the right is the ground floor where the car park is, and 180 square metres for the golf pro shop and the tennis pro shop as well. One thing I just want to emphasise as well with the proposed DA, you can see where all the buildings are, all the new recreation spaces are, all facing onto the greenery of the golf course. And so I hope that clarifies there that I've got a summary table. If we look at here, all the spaces, in total, if you include the current facility, you can see the like for like and what actual square meterage and increase there is over the facility. So we're well and truly seeing more than a doubling of the overall space for outdoor dining, indoor dining, golfers lounge, public meeting room, and all the recreation spaces compared to the current golf club house building. So hopefully that helps to bust that myth there, that I think very clearly you can see there is more recreation space in this proposed DA. Now, a few fact checks. Again, these are some themes that have come up about alternative locations, whether it be Lane Cove West, Gore Hill Oval, Blackman Park, the Civic Centre, or behind the new house farm at Sarah Street. So I wanted to cover off on each of these. A lot of people reference about Lane Cove West being a more suitable location. This comes from the August council meeting, and you'll note as well in my email below, I've tried as much as possible to source all the references and all the documents that I'm referring to. So we're dealing with facts here. This looked at what was called option 2, which is currently what we're seeing in this DA to the Sydney North Planning Panel. Cost there is $65 million. The difference of 75 is then council made a decision to invest further in sustainability initiatives. So that's why we've now got a $75 million budget for this building. Looking at what would be a hybrid option. So if we were to have purchased a warehouse in Lane Cove West, which the one that was being looked at was a maximum 4 courts that could be located there. If we were to try and then retrofit the existing tennis courts on the site at 180 River Road to be multi-purpose as well, build a new clubhouse, because that would need to be done. We're looking at a $79 million cost there just to try and get a like for recreation space that's currently at the existing facility. That $79 million price tag doesn't include any further sustainability initiatives. So if you were to do a like for like, it's not exact, it's just a hypothetical, but if we were going to put $10 million of sustainability initiatives in what is DA 147, thought would be you do another $10 million for a hybrid option, Lane Cove West, and a smaller version at the 180 River Road site, we'd be pushing $89 million. The other thing too is that $79 million price tag didn't include additional parking to be built at 180 River Road, because it's not just a case of resurfacing the tennis courts there to be multi-purpose for netball predominantly. The current car park isn't large enough, so you'd have to start to build something like a concrete slab kind of structure to put parking underneath, for example. Now, they are just broad examples, but in my personal opinion, I think that shows why the Lane Cove West option was not feasible. 4 things that were looked at in all the various sites that council did look at in Lane Cove West. Was it strata? Because if it's strata, it's going to be pretty hard to amalgamate an entire site. Was the floor plan large enough to hold indoor courts? So that starts to restrict a number of sites. Is the roof high enough? You need, and don't quote me exactly on these numbers, I think it's around 8.5 metres you need for an indoor sports facility ceiling height. A lot of these sites did not have that ceiling height. And was there enough parking? So there was no one site that met all that criteria from the research that was done in the Lane Cove West Business Park. Hence, the one example we had of buying a site, building 4 courts, was basically we'd have to rip the roof off that building and completely construct a whole new roof and supports essentially walls as well for that facility. So it wasn't a cheap exercise. So that's the Lane Cove West option here. Gore Hill Oval, a lot of people saying, why don't we just go and build a larger facility with Willoughby? These here are snapshots taken out of the March 2021 meeting from Willoughby Council. What I've got here on the left is Willoughby looked at 3 options. One was a smaller option with 6 courts. One was a 6-court option with a sports hall and a health and fitness facilities. And one option 3 was an 8-court facility. And importantly, what Willoughby found was in each of these options, they looked at what's shown in the 3rd row of this table on the right, is what is the total net operating cost of this facility over a 20-year period. So option 1 and option 2, which were the 2 6-court concepts, are cash flow positive. So that means that for them to operate that facility, they don't have to subsidise the operation of it. Option 3, which is the larger 8-court facility, was found, and it states here in the officer's report to Willoughby Council, with a net cash loss of $11.7 million over a 20-year period, option 3 is not viable. That is why the larger facility in Willoughby was not pursued by Willoughby. And this is the discussion I had back in March with the Mayor of Willoughby and the General Manager of Willoughby, and I reported this in a Merrill Minute to the April Council meeting. That's a key principle that both councils have looked into, particularly in Lane Cove Council. Our business case shows on our conservative assumptions that the Lane Cove facility would be cash flow positive from an operational basis. And that's very important because our rate revenue barely covers up with our ongoing maintenance, let alone new capital. So we feel, and it's my personal opinion, if we are smart with managing our new assets, we need a facility that can cover its own operating expenses. If we then factor in debt, what Willoughby looked at was what cash they had on hand for this project. They, at the time, had $46 million available and saved already in cash. They looked at if you borrowed money to make up the difference. All options were cash flow negative if you borrow money. And it is true that the Lane Cove site at 180 River Road, whilst we have a $10 million loan, the facility itself doesn't cover off the cost of repaying the loan. That's where we have the income from the investment properties and the canopy that would enable that debt to be paid off. And here's a real key distinction between an asset that generates an economic return, which is what the private sector generally will invest in, versus what social infrastructure local government will invest in. The fact is, if we look at our ovals, if we look at our library, if we look at the swimming pool, those kind of assets do not generate a sufficient return to be able to replace themselves or to, if you borrow money, to pay off the loan. And that's the very reason why government actually provides those assets, because they are loss-making in an economic sense, but they're beneficial for our society in a social sense. So it's interesting that if you're looking at, and it's something that also a lot of people critique, so I'm sharing my opinion here, a lot of people were critiquing that whilst Lane Cove Council is proposing to take a $10 million loan to build the 180 River Road facility, that yes, it needs cross-subsidisation from the canopy to pay off the principal. That is true, but so does Willoughby. If Willoughby borrows money to build their option 2, again, that'll be cash flow negative as well. Some people would say then, well, what if Lane Cove gives cash for Willoughby to build their centre? Then they won't have debt, but we still got this fundamental thing. The research shows, which I'll touch on, is that in our immediate area in the short term, we're 9 courts, multi-purpose courts short right now, with another 4 in the future going to 2036. As a broader region, that's 15 and 10, so 25 courts short overall. And if we do go with Willoughby, we're still short of space. And the key is, I don't know, Willoughby doesn't even have detailed design. This is my personal guesstimate. Willoughby might be 2 years away before being able to lodge a DA. Whereas Lane Cove, obviously we're ready to lodge a DA pending the Sydney North Planning Panel decision. So there you are. So that talks a bit about the Gore Hill site. Happy to answer some more questions on that. Blackman Park, a lot of people talk about Blackman Park. This was presented to the May council meeting, and basically here they were looking at if you take 4 courts and build a 4-court facility. The red shows the courts, The green is the runoff space you then need around a court. And look, the reason why 4 courts is all the research showed that you really need a minimum 4-court facility to achieve that outcome where the facility can cover its own operating costs. Anything smaller than a 4-court facility is likely to be uneconomic in the sense that you'll need to cross-subsidise the operations of a smaller facility. So over to the left, it could fit a 4-court facility at Blackman Park. However, that's in bushland, right on the edge of mangrove swamp. So we've always deemed that an unnecessary inappropriate location to build a facility. If you go, people have cited over the car park. Well, here it's showing the width isn't wide enough. Secondly, that is old tip there. It's very uneven surface. So as we learned from when we got the sinkhole, it's 12 metres deep of fill across this site or at that point there. The council depot was mentioned again showing there on the property boundaries, doesn't fit a 4-court facility. One thing to also factor in there is we'd have to find a new depot elsewhere. And here are some interesting stats that were again included in the May meeting of Blackman Park, and already Blackman Park can have up to 3,300 people visit a day. At its peak, averaging 1,000 to 2,000 easily on a weekend. Key point here is Blackman Park has no direct public transport. Blackman Park parking 238 car spaces. Anyone who goes down there already knows it's at capacity. You got small streets to access that site. It'd be bottleneck if we build anything further there. In my personal opinion, Blackman Park is full. There's not much more capacity or activities that we can put down there. This also looked at the Civic Centre. A lot of people mentioned about the Civic Centre. Same thing again, 4-court facility, doesn't fit on that site. A lot of people then reference Pottery Green. Well, given we've got a shortage of ovals, and in July, Council last year gave a report about our oval capacity. So we're pretty much almost full with our oval capacity. We're going to hit a point where for field sports, basically in the next decade, there's no growth for field sports. What capacity is currently there, that is there. I'm having a guess there's no appetite to put floodlights on Kingsford Smith Oval or Burns Bay Oval to make them available at night. So if we're going to keep the status quo with our ovals, they're at capacity, and hence, using part of Pottery Green for an indoor sports centre would seem a bit ironic. Another people, this is a fairly new one, a lot of people have been mentioning about back of Sarah Street or back of Harris Farm. This is some personal measurements that I've done. I've gone to Google. Essentially, I've tried to look on the land ownership, the biggest space. So biggest space outside Birralee and between Harris Farm, 30 metres across, 55 metres to the boundary. A full-size netball court is approximately 30 metres by 15 metres. If you include your runoff on the sides, you'd be lucky to, you can fit one netball court there, you can't fit 2. So again, that notion of building a 4-court facility on Sarah Street, just not possible. So hopefully that helps there, just to help clarify a few things around alternative locations. Fact-checking the demand and business case. And here, look, I wanted to give just a bit of a history of how long this has actually been running. 2008 was when Lane Cove came up with this first recreation action plan. And this basically identified in Lane Cove that there were no multi-purpose courts in our area, namely basketball and netball. So 2008, that's where it was first slated as an idea that Lane Cove Council should look at building an indoor sport and recreation facility. In 2013, that's where Lane Cove Council started its initial feasibility report with Montemari. Basically, this looked at the golf course site and what were the benefits and disadvantages of building an indoor recreation facility on that site. So again, focusing on the need to build indoor facilities. In 2015, North Sydney Council did a similar study looking at their recreation needs. And again, finding very consistent themes. So there's a trend that's developing here. Everyone's identifying that there's a shortfall of courts right now, that netball's got no capacity to grow. You can see here some excerpts that I've taken from there is that the Netball Association requires 40 courts back in 2015, and at that time they only had 19, and that has not changed since. And even then, the redevelopment of the Willoughby Indoor Centre was forecasting that they'll lose 2 courts to play sport, noting that basketball has a 25-year lease on the Hume Street site, so there is no capacity for netball to use that facility either. And what I'd like to point out too is since 2015, when this report was done, you've then had the St Leonard's and Crow's Nest 2036 plan put into the mix as well, which has over 6,000 new dwellings coming into the area on top of the shortfall that was identified almost 8 years ago. In 2015, Lane Cove Council again used Montemari to do an updated analysis of what size, what scale of building and the associated costs council needs to consider. In 2017, the Northern Sydney Regional Organisation of Councils, so that's all the councils from Hunters Hill, Lane Cove, Willoughby, North Sydney, Mossman, Ku-ring-gai, Ryde, Hornsby, if I remembered everyone correctly. They did a regional strategy on both sport fields, and they basically identified here that there's very limited or no capacity to have new playing fields, particularly in the lower North Shore. Therefore, that will need to be supplemented with indoor sporting facilities to cope with the increase in population and demand for sport. And this strategy is currently being reviewed last year, and it should go public, as I understand it, this year, an updated strategy. So that, again, from what I've seen as a draft, it's consistent with all these other reports. 2020, that's where Lane Cove Council did its updated business case, which was the focus of our community workshop in May of last year. And I should mention as well, both the Lane Cove report, the Willoughby report, and the North Sydney reports all reference that they have spoken with the neighbouring councils about what each neighbouring council is doing. So, for example, the Lane Cove business case assumes Willoughby's building their 6-court facility, and the Willoughby business case assumes Lane Cove is building a 9-court facility, which of course this council has resolved to do an 8-court facility instead. So they all cross-reference each other. That's something you'll find in all of those documents. The Willoughby feasibility report, which I just sort of gave a bit of a precursor to, this was done in 2021. Again, reinforcing that shortfall of 15 courts by 2021. So that's right now. Our area is short of 15 courts in the broader region, 9 in our immediate, and still identifying that there's a further 10 courts that will be needed. So that is something that you can see. There's a theme amongst all these reports. Last year, we had Basketball New South Wales present to our community workshop on the business case, identifying that there is currently 1,500 spots for basketball that they cannot meet because they don't have a facility. Netball again presented at our community workshop, and this shows the Northern Suburbs Netball Association. Both the basketball and netball reports are available on the Lane Cove Council website under the Sport and Rec Hot Topics tab. In our region, for netball, there's 6,082 players in the Northern Suburbs Netball Association. 1,400 of those live in the Lane Cove LGA. Per court, they have 313 players per court for a competition day. That is remarkably over capacity compared to other regions in Sydney, where you can see others where it deemed that demand is exceeding capacity, being Manly, Warringah and Sutherland Shire. They're at 195 players to 175. If you look around the rest of Sydney, Eastwood, Ku-ring-gai, Hills District, Randwick, Baulkham Hills, they're not 100 players per day to 164 players per day. So it shows how short we are at courts in our region for netball compared to other regions. And then 2022, you've got as well, again, just reconfirming in the case of Lane Cove Council, what organisations Lane Cove Council has consulted with in regards to supply and demand for such a facility. So as you can see there, there's a big history of how the demand for this has been assessed. And, I think what's important here is that, again, this is information that was available in the May council meeting that on the 2011 census, Lane Cove had a population of 31,000. 2022 census recorded 40,000. So we've had a 25% increase in our population in that time. It is forecast by 2041 our population will be shy of 50,000 residents in the Lane Cove LGA. And in that time, since 2011, no additional multi-court facility has been provided in the lower North Shore of the Lane Cove area. So that shows, and I'm sharing my personal opinion here, we know we cannot increase our capacity on our sporting fields. So as we get another 10,000 people into our area over the next 10 years, it's going to be a facility, in my opinion, like an indoor sport and recreation facility that's going to meet that demand for additional sporting needs, as well as the recreation use as well. And you see in the numbers prior, there's a big increase in provision for recreation space in the proposed facility as well. So there you are. I emphasise that what I've shared with you is my personal opinion. There's more information below in the email. If there's any further questions, please ask me. On a personal note, and this is very much my personal opinion, I believe this is the first, it's a fact, this is the first council lever in 15 years that it can decide to actually action building an indoor sport and recreation facility. I am satisfied that all other options have been considered. It was my idea to come up with the idea of investigating Lane Cove West. I've shared with you my opinion as to why that was not viable in my eyes. And I think it would be a shame personally that given everything stays in a reasonable frame for council to commit to, that we do start building a facility in our area. A lot of people said in the feedback, what's the opportunity cost of council spending $60 million of its own cash out of 120 odd million? I'd like to say that council has been planning for this project for 15 years. So Lane Cove Council has saved money to be in a position where it can spend $60 million on an indoor sport and recreation facility. Our general works reserve is still another $16 million that we've got available to do other works as well. Our finances don't include the forward pipeline of 7-Eleven developer contributions that are going to come in. So there's a lot of sites that have a DA approved, particularly at the moment in our Lane Cove North in the Mowbray precinct, in the western part of that precinct, where there are DAs that are approved, but the construction certificate hasn't been issued. We know at some point in time those developer contributions will come in, but we're not counting those in our numbers yet because we don't know when construction will start. So there's still a pipeline of 7-Eleven contributions that will still come into council further to this as well. So look, as I said, please remember, this is a summary. The spirit of me sharing this with you was I just wanted to help to clarify some myths that I think you can understand now why I felt I had to myth bust those. Some points to clarify that hopefully have some information. And as always, I welcome questions and here to help answer them for you. So thank you for watching this long video. Cheers.